Welcome to Myers ASMR. I'm so glad to see you. How are you doing today? I've been waiting for you, and now you're here. And guess what? It's right for things to work out for you. It's right for things to work out for you. This is today's story time. Yay, I'm eager to see where we're up to. I'm down to the bottom of the bag where the chips get all small. This is my everyday water bottle. Except there's never water in it, it's always tea. Well, all right. Let's get into the story today. I'm still trying to figure out which way this mic goes. I think it goes this way. So, we're up to big bands in the mainstream. The freedom that jazz offered to large ensembles led musicians with common backgrounds to adopt a variety of musical strategies. As a rule, it was the white musicians who were learning lessons from their black counterparts, and no white musician of the period absorbed the jazz spirit thoroughly or to greater public impact than clarinetist Benny Goodman. Swing era precursors. Paul Whiteman continued to present a hodgepodge of music, hiring talented jazz players including trumpeter Roland Bunny Berrigan and trombonist Jack Teagarden, and then giving them limited feature space. Other white bands were taking jazz more seriously. The Casa Loma Orchestra became widely popular with college audiences for boldly rhythmic pieces including Casa Loma Stomp and San Sue Strut that reflected the influence of Henderson and Redman. Gene Gifford, the band's primary arranger, wrote pieces called white jazz, black jazz, and blues jazz to show the music was becoming a multi-hued enterprise. We're still on the section that's called Swing and Satchmo, the period from 1921 to 1940. Benny Goodman. Benny Goodman spent the first portion of his career perfecting his instrumental command and his demanding musicianship in his hometown Chicago, where he heard many of the New Orleans masters as well as Beiderbecke, in a tour with drummer Ben Pollack's orchestra that reached California. And finally, during a half-dozen productive years as a freelance musician, in the radio and recording studios of New York. By 1934, Goodman was ready to organize his own big band. By the end of 1935, the Goodman Band was a pop music phenomenon and the swing era was born. The importance of black arrangers. Many leading soloists played in Goodman's band during the remainder of the decade, including a few trumpeters, Berrigan and Harry James, drummer Gene Krupa, who were able to launch successful bands of their own. Yet the key to Goodman's success was the writing, contributed by such leading arrangers as Benny Carter, Fletcher Henderson, and Edgar Sampson. Many of their popular works had already been recorded by Henderson. King Porter Stomp, Down South, Camp Meetin', or Chick Webb, Stompin' at the Savoy. Don't Be That Way, albeit without the crispness and point execution that Goodman demanded. Must know, Benny Goodman's big band was the most jazz-attuned of his white studio counterparts, often playing scores by leading black arrangers. Radio ignites the swing phenomenon. Beginning in November 1934, Goodman's band had been featured on the NBC network program Let's Dance, which aired at 9 p.m. in California and at midnight in East Coast cities. This time difference explains the unexpected riot that greeted Goodman when he opened with one of Henderson's arrangements at Los Angeles Palomar Ballroom in August 1935. His primetime West Coast broadcast had been heard by young dancers before their East Coast counterparts discovered what came to be known as swing music. Word spread quickly once Goodman began recording prolifically for RCA Victor, moved to the earlier Camel Caravan program on the CBS network, and made film appearances in the big broadcast of 1937 and other features. Soon, teenagers were also rioting at the Paramount Theater in New York, while the aloof and temperamental Goodman was hailed as the king of swing. Must know, Goodman combined a discipline in ensemble and abandon in solos that the general public embraced. He brought jazz as close as it would ever come to a position of dominance in popular music. King or thief? Goodman and other studio veterans who went on to swing-era success, including Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey, Artie Shaw, and Glenn Miller, were excellent musicians. Goodman was also an excellent improviser, with an honest rhythmic flair and a personal feeling for the popular songs of the period. The interest he generated in big bands also led to a wider hearing for black band readers, including Webb Lunsford and the flamboyant Cab Calloway. Yet the cultural double standard that placed Goodman at the pinnacle of an African-American musical style has led many observers and musicians to conclude that his success was not honestly gained, that he had stolen jazz, as Elvis Presley would later be accused of stealing rhythm and blues. It is closer to the truth to credit Goodman for appreciating jazz more than most of his Caucasian contemporaries and applying his own personality to the music more successfully. Must know, Benny Goodman would have never realized his triumph without the assistance of radio. Let's look at a picture of Benny Goodman. The urge to integrate. Jazz hadn't been a racially exclusive enterprise since its youth in New Orleans, and jazz musicians had begun ignoring color lines long before the rest of American society. But the Benny Goodman Quartet brought integration front and center while opening up opportunities for musicians to showcase their talents in a small group format. The years prior to Benny Goodman's initial success were dotted with examples of interracial collaboration in the recording studio, including the New Orleans Rhythm Kings' Jelly Roll Morton Encounter of 1923 and Louis Armstrong's 1929 Knockin' a Jug. In the Mound City Blues Blowers recordings of the same year, Coleman Hawkins stood shoulder to shoulder with Glenn Miller and Charles Pee Wee Russell. In a stunning 1932 series by a group called the Rhythm Makers found New Orleans giants Red Allen and Zutty Singleton joining forces with Russell Gene Krupa and Tommy Dorsey. In featuring the music of black arrangers in his live performances, Goodman simply made this connection more overt. Did you know Knockin' a Jug was the first recorded meeting between trumpeter Louis Armstrong and trombone giant Jack Teagarden? Integration on the bandstand. Goodman did far more when he and Krupa began recording and then performing live with pianist Teddy Wilson and vibraphonist Lionel Hampton in the Benny Goodman Trio and Quartet. Black and white musicians on stage together was a radical statement in 1936. Integration with a vengeance. Hampton stated in 1944 that the Benny Goodman Quartet opened the door for Jackie Robinson coming into Major League Baseball. The integration of musicians started a lot of things happening. Must know, the racially integrated Goodman combo, which played feature segments during the big band's performances, has been cited as one of the first salvos of the civil rights movement. Small groups in the big band era. The quartet's success also created a bit of space, at least in the recording studios, for smaller jazz units. A few of these combos managed to sustain a performing career during the peak of big bands, including Fats Waller's Rhythm, the similarly ebullient Onyx Club Boys that violinist Hezekiah Stuff Smith led on Manhattan's 52nd Street, and the more refined sextet of bassist John Kirby, which interpreted classical material as well as more typical riff tunes. Yet big band sounds continued to dominate, and instrumental soloists who worked in the big bands rarely found opportunities to display their full talents within the confines of arrangements generally designed to feature vocalists and to highlight the power of the full ensemble. As a result, many musicians are best remembered today for their work in small bands assembled specifically for recordings. Ted Wilson, the Goodman Trio Quartet pianist, led one such series on the Brunswick label that initially established Billie Holiday. Goodman Quartet vibist Lionel Hampton created an equally imposing small group discography on RCA Victor's Bluebird subsidiary. Both leaders were able to draw upon musicians from the best black and white swing bands, and what resulted, as with the Hot 5 and Hot 7 a decade earlier, is a picture of the era quite different from the nightly working norm. Leon Chu Berry, for example, was a star tenor saxophone soloist with Cab Calloway's orchestra, yet may be better known historically for the recordings he cut with Wilson and Hampton. Pianist Teddy Wilson became highly influential through his work in Benny Goodman's small groups and the recording sessions under his own name that made Billie Holiday a star. The true king of swing. A new infusion of talent, not to mention the true epitome of swing, was injected into the national scene when William Count Basie brought his orchestra east from Kansas City at the end of 1936. One of the orchestra's stars was hip saxophonist Lester Young, who, along with other jazz visionaries of the late 1930s, anticipated the modern sounds that would shortly follow. Did you know Count Basie a native of New Jersey, had been stranded in the Midwest by a failed vaudeville tour in 1927. Basie had been the featured pianist with bassist Walter Page's Blue Devils, a group second to none in its interpretations of blues material, and one of the first to streamline jazz rhythm into a smoother 4/4 feeling. Basie Page and Page's star singer Jimmy Rushing ultimately joined Benny Moulton, Kansas City's top band leader. When Moulton died in 1935, Basie took these key players and added others, including tenor saxophonist Lester Young and drummer Joe Jones, to create his own group. The Basie band was looser in its beat and its approach to orchestration, since it relied less upon written arrangements than improvised riffs created by the sections on the bandstand and then memorized, hence the term head arrangement, meaning something remembered rather than committed to paper. Here's a picture of Count Basie acknowledging the crowd. Producer John Hammond, who among other things would become Goodman's brother-in-law, grew so excited upon hearing a Basie radio broadcast in Chicago that he drove straight to Kansas City and persuaded Basie to head east. While the public initially considered Basie's approach too rough and tumble, his lean reduction of the current style typified what territory bands in the Midwest and Southwest had been doing for several years, and established musicians, including Goodman, who had a bigger hit with Basie's theme, 1 O'Clock Jump, than Basie himself, were quick to catch on. Well, thanks for watching and listening. Remember, you came for the fun. There's nothing serious going on here. Hey, if you want to help me out, if you like what I'm doing, donate to my Cash App, like and subscribe. Catch me in the next video, and may you find lasting happiness. Bye.